Welcome back to another wonderful edition of Ty's Vlogs. Tonight, I'm gardening. That's right. It is so nice out. I have no idea what the temperatures were today. Maybe in the 80s here in Omaha, Nebraska. I actually started gardening before it got dark out. It just is dark now. Really, what I was doing was just trimming up these cherry blossoms. Which, if you didn't know, cherry blossoms aren't cherry blossoms. They're cherry trees. But they're a hybrid crop. Lost you there. So what you get instead with the trees is and they're very tart. You can't actually eat them, but and the point is that they've tried to reduce how much the plant fruits. But a cherry blossom or a plum blossom, the ones that are just supposed to just be a floral tree, they still produce fruit, but it minimizes it, which is easier to handle. So, okay, we're gonna have to live with the cruddy Wi-Fi and see if I can get closer to these trees without it going out on us. I'm not talking about like trees you'd put in an orchard, because those have to be pruned specifically to either be hand-picked or picked by machines, and so they have to be thinned out very specifically. So I'll just tell you what I do with like trees that you'll have in your yard. So the first thing I do is I clip off any branches which are overhanging an area that are too low. So we have a walkway here and a spot where cars can park next to our property. So what I did was I just trimmed some branches that are a little low. Some of these are still a little low, but I'm going to say that there's about 6 feet tall, because I'm 5'8", can fit underneath the branches on this tree right now. I didn't trim away too much. I tried to be conservative about it. The less you trim away, the less it's going to harm the plant, the quicker it can heal. As a major rule, the number one rule for trimming a woody plant, or pretty much any plant, is don't cut away more than 1/3 of the plant at a time. So if you have, if you're trying to prune back basically an entire tree, and you want it to grow back differently, not including certain trees that you are supposed to prune back every year, which is very rare. There's very few trees like that. They pretty much only live in temperate, subtropical, and tropical climates, those particular trees. I can't name some of them off the top of my head. But anyway, for 90% of the other trees, like this cherry blossom, you just want to trim back no more than 1/3 of the tree. So let's say you have to trim, the tree's just growing wrong and you want to start over, but you don't want to dig the tree up. You still want to use the tree. You can trim back 1/3 of the tree each year. So in about 3 years, maybe 4, if you stagger it a little more, you'll have the tree that you want, that you desire. You'll have the branches growing. The new branches that grow back will hopefully be growing in the direction that you want. Some of them will still grow back in the direction you don't want. So try to, now as for exactly how to trim back, like where to cut it, what type of tool to use, how far you should cut a particular branch, all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to go into that. We don't have enough light, honestly, to do that right now. But let's go back to what branches I try to prune off for about 90% of the trees out there. So the first thing I do is I get rid of the branches that are in the way. And then if I still have if I'm still within that 1/3 tolerance, the next step is I trim away any dead or decaying matter. Now realize that that might mean that the tree is infected with something. So every time you clip off an infected branch, even if you're not right next to the infection or the possible site of infection, you're going to want to sterilize your tools. And the best way to do that is to have just a cup with some rubbing alcohol. If you have your hand shears, or even just loppers, large shears, go ahead and dip them into the every time. Just dip the blade in the you know, the cutting part. Go ahead and dip that into the rubbing alcohol. You want at least a 50% rubbing alcohol, and you don't dilute it in anything. And that should pretty much sterilize it, so that you can go ahead and keep trimming away different parts, and you can go ahead and trim off a part that is infected, dip it in the alcohol, and then if you want, you can go to the next part that's not infected and trim away. So if I'm still within the 1/3 tolerance after that, the third thing that I do, first thing's going to be branches that are in the way for like parking and walking things that are not within tolerance for human beings. Second thing is dead and decaying infected matter too. And then the next thing, and you don't have to do it in this order, it's a general order I like to follow. Maybe I'm just OCD about it. Then I trim away branches that are growing downward. Now what I mean by that, let's see if I can get a little closer without this video going out. So we have a branch, right? Let's pretend this branch is growing downward. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Here is a branch that's growing in an upward position. Anything from about horizontal all the way out. So this one, well, yeah, we'll call that horizontal. There's a little bend in it. That's just because of the foliage. Anything from horizontal up is good. But let's say this branch was attached to here. So we got horizontal. This would be okay, other than the fact that it's over the walkway. So let's pretend it's growing over the median like we want, okay? So it's growing over the median. It's good to go. It's not infected. And it's growing horizontally or upward. That's okay. As soon as the branch grows at the crotch where the branch meets the larger branch, the mother branch, if you will, as soon as you find a branch that's growing downward, or after you've had heavy snows, maybe in the spring, you wait until it gets its foliage and it's still growing downward, but last year it was growing, you know, horizontal or up, just clip it off. Get rid of it. Get rid of all those branches. That's the third thing. So if you're still within the tolerance, the next thing I do is I find branches that are intersecting each other. What I mean by that is we have, okay, so if there are branches that are facing too far up or too far down, that are, like, let's say this branch here, right? Instead of growing in between all these other branches, it was growing into these. I'd clip it back. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to clip the whole branch off. I said I wasn't really going to get into this, but I'll kind of talk about it. Let's say it's this branch here, right? If there is an old clipping, or just something, some kind of smaller twig or branch that can take over as the apex. So like even this little guy right here might be able to do that, or it might bud and then take over as the apex. You can clip it right before that. If you don't want to get rid of the whole branch, then you just clip it back just a little bit. If this is the part that's intersecting, clip it back a little bit, and then see if it starts to grow out in another direction that's appeasable, that you accept. That's the next thing. I try and find any fruit that is on the tree, and remove it. Now that's if you're not trying to produce fruit on your tree. If you are, that's a whole other topic, you know, thinning fruits and things like that. What else? At the tips, sometimes the branches will start to compete amongst themselves, basically. So like right here, we have a Y in the branch, and we have these one, two branches coming out, and there were like 4 on there, and they were competing. This Y was competing to see which one was going to become the apex of the branch. So what I did was I evened them out. I got rid of some of them. Some of them were a little overlapping, and I just made it easier for these other branches. I selected which branches I wanted to possibly become the apex, and I left 2 of them. So there's 2 choices there. And they're both growing in the direction that I want, at the angle that I want, for the location of in the tree. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait, and I'm going to watch those grow. And maybe next year, or maybe in fall, I'll clip them back again. I'll say, oh, well, I know which one I want to be the apex for sure, because it's not because maybe one of them grows into another branch like I don't want. And so those are the main things, guys. There's other things like, is the branch maybe a bit too heavy? Do you want to remove some twigs from the branch that have a lot of foliage on them so that it can lighten up? Or do you want to maybe support and that's why I don't necessarily consider it a pruning guideline, because maybe you want to support that branch even though it's a little heavy, because maybe if you support the branch, then in the future it won't be too heavy. It will grow in thickness and it'll be able to hold itself. And as you support the branch, you can slowly decide what you want to prune off. But clearly I have a very nicely shaped tree. Well, I think it's clear. You know, we have a main trunk. It splits off, and it's nice and wide. It's fanned. It gives a lot of shaded area, if you will. There's plenty of space between the branches, so they can move around freely, get plenty of sunlight. There's no foliage blocking other foliage in a big way, but it's still providing shade to the ground below it. Not really. It's not a big enough tree to provide that much shade yet, especially with all the asphalt, but it's getting there. And then this tree, which is just not growing as vigorously, but it's doing well. Same thing, similar shape, how it's nice and big and round. And I'm not saying that all trees are going to look like that. I mean, here's an evergreen. It doesn't look like that. Not even all deciduous trees like this are going to look like this. But these two trees, I definitely wanted this shape. I want them to take up as much space as possible here without being in the way, and while still being healthy and vigorous. So yeah, those are my major guidelines for medium and even large size trees. Mostly, I guess we're just talking about mostly deciduous trees, although a lot of those guidelines really still apply to, like an evergreen, like a pine or a spruce or a redwood. Well, redwoods are a little silly, but you still want to kind of trim away the dead and decaying, trim away anything that's in the way. That wasn't the order that I went in before. Trim away anything that's in the way. Trim away the dead and decaying matter. Trim away any branches that are knocking against other branches heavily, or blocking up branches. Open up some space so that the light can get in, so it can maximize the use of its leaves, or needles, if you will, etc. Yeah, I hope that you guys liked this video. Oh, by the way, it's pretty acceptable to trim bushes in a similar manner. You're just obviously going to have, well, not necessarily, but you probably have multiple stalks coming directly from the crown or the ground where the roots meet the shoots. Anyway, if you guys like this video, please give a like, give a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, then just give me a thumbs down, but tell me why. Clearly, it's a live stream, so it's not succinct, it's not short. I'm okay with that. Well, it's not that long either. It's 15 minutes. It's about what YouTube says that's what statistics say is a good length of a video for YouTube. I know I'm umming and I'm mumbling and stuff like that. I know it's a little loud because of cars or whatever, and I'm filming this on my phone. You don't have to comment about that kind of stuff. It's a live stream. If you're like, Ty, I really like your videos, but I hate your live streams, well, you can say that. That's reasonable. Then maybe you can go into what would make a better live stream, or live streams just suck to you, so you don't want to see them at all. That's fine. Let me know. Don't be rude. I'll just delete your comment. And have a good night. God bless. Go back to doing some homework, because it's finals for the quarter. Right, Mr. Kitty? Isn't that right, Simon? Oh, you're a good boy. All right. Bye, guys.